Hello, BookTube. It's Saturday, and it's early evening here. It's just gone 6 p.m. And it's been a bit of a dreary day, but I wasn't working today, so I thought I'd spend the day sort of catching up on a few magazines, periodicals, and so forth. And it's interesting how several things have sort of dovetailed together, interestingly. And we'll get to that eventually. I'll start with a few things that came in sort of post-wise. Well, one was delivered by Amazon delivery, and the other by the Royal Mail. And three books that I had ordered. I ordered these almost 2 weeks ago, I think, from Amazon, but I think that they just didn't have them in stock, and I had to wait for them. But they finally came today. They're ones that I've spoken about in Jason Harrigan as well. They're Wordsworth Press, or Wordsworth Books. They're a cheap reprint company, and that's better. Cheap reprint company, and but they're really good. Like they're just the full price is £2.99 for these. The Tales of Mystery and the Supernatural. These are sort of the newish covers that they've had. A few that Jason's showed were the older covers. So that's In a Glass Darkly by Sheridan Le Fanu. And that has a number of things in here. It's compiled or introduction by Paul M. Chapman, and even because they're cheap, they're sort of a discount or cheap reprint company, they still have introductions in, which is kind of nice. This has Green Tea, The Familiar, Mr. Justice Harbottle, The Room in Le Dragon Volant, and Carmilla. Yeah, Carmilla is the last one that's in there. And I also got Madame Crowell's Ghost and Other Stories by Sheridan Le Fanu. I kind of like these covers. They're embossed, like this one here too. It's the picture, you can feel it. It's as if it's a plastic put on. It's kind of neat. And this one has collected and edited. Oh, it was collected and edited by M.R. James, the collection. I wasn't aware of that. And it actually has an introduction by M.R. James. Yeah, that's even a plus. But it's Madame Crowell's Ghost, Squire Toby's Will, Dickon the Devil, The Child That Went with the Fairies, The White Cat of Drumgonagle, an account of some strange disturbances in Onger Street, ghost stories of Chapezoid, Wicked Captain Walshaw of Wowling, Sir Dominic's Bargain, Ulter de Lace, The Vision of Tom Clough, and Stories of Lough Geyer, I guess it is. So that's quite interesting. Again, it's the newer edition. And then the last one that I have here is The Haunted House and Other Stories by Wilkie Collins. And again, these were just the full price, as I say, are $2.99. But a lot of times on Amazon they drop, and these were dropped to just over £2 each. So I think for £6.25 or something like that, I got all three in with shipping. As I say, it's part of the series there, Tales of Mystery and Supernatural. The sad thing is now they've discontinued a huge amount of titles. 8 years ago, I guess it was, I had would have been the full every volume, and they weren't all supernatural. There were things like imitation of contemporaries of Sherlock Holmes, that type of thing. And there was other case book of I can't remember, but there was a lot of other detective type stories. There was a Carnacki, I think it was. Yeah, Carnacki. There was a collection, and there was G.K. Chesterton stuff. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was there, and I gave them away when I had to put books in storage, and I thought those were cheap and could save a lot of space because I had a whole bunch of the literature too. It was like 3 or 4 shelves of this stuff because I bought them because they were so cheap. and I just get rid of, I got rid of them. But then, as I say now, you can't get them. You can only get the used ones, so it's a bit sad. So I hope, but maybe they'll start reprinting again. So we'll see. The other one that came was that there was a series of books. Well, there's many titles. There's dozens and dozens of these. They're the Mammoth Book of, and it's everything. I picked up recently the Mammoth Book of modern ghost stories, and the Mammoth Book of, I think it was haunted house stories. And I was actually looking for the Mammoth Book of science fiction stories. The Gardner Dozois was edited. But I couldn't find any in like good enough shape. But then I saw this one here. It was new on Amazon as well. It's the Mammoth Book of Halloween stories, and I didn't realize it was like a larger format. But I looked then I looked in the used section to see what other sellers were selling it for, and there was one there for £1.25, I think, like that, for with shipping. And I thought, well, I don't know the book at all, so I figured £1.25. I'll take a gamble on that. I expected it to be ex-library or in really, really crappy shape, but I thought if I could get a read out of it, and if I really enjoyed it, then I could get a better copy of it. But this has come, as you can see. There is a flaw with it. It's up here. That's it. It's been bumped and it's creased there. But the cover price of that, I think it was $10.99 or £11.99 pounds on Amazon. But anyway, that's what's come. But now let's get to the periodicals and how, as I say, things dovetail. I only received this is last week's Times Literary Supplement, and I only received it on Monday, and I hadn't really had a chance to look at it. I still haven't received. Well, this is. Yeah, I'll give you the date. This is October 9th. I should have had October 15th, yesterday's, Wednesday, Thursday, or even Friday, or maybe even today, but it hasn't come. What came today was and late as well, was, I don't think I have it here to hand, is the London Review of Books, which I haven't had a look at yet. That came to today's post. But no, I started reading this, and there's some interesting, the MC column that's replaced, was it NC, yeah. And it starts out, there's three little bits in here. And one is with regards to Sherlock Holmes, and Netflix apparently has released a film, or did a film called Enola Holmes, which is a fictional younger sister, I think, of Sherlock. Sherlock is a character in it, I take it. And the producers or makers of it, and maybe even Netflix, are being sued by the Conan Doyle estate, apparently, because there are six stories, I think, that are still copyrighted until 2023. And in those last stories that Doyle wrote, apparently, that's where he's changed Holmes, and he becomes more emotional, tolerant to women, and things like that. So they added these things into the character, and the estate is objecting to it, and apparently suing them over it. And then it talks about there was the little bit of the new annotated Sherlock Holmes by Leslie S. Klinger. I'd like to get that because I've seen it a few times and I missed it, and I wonder why maybe it's disappeared, and this could be it. There was a problem with this. The lawyer and editor, there was, Leslie Klinger is a lawyer, and he edited this, and he was also a consultant, I believe, on the film Enola Holmes. But there was some kind of problem, apparently, with, I haven't looked it up, but apparently there was some kind of problem that he was sued, or the publisher was sued. I think it was Random House that did the annotated editions. And maybe that's why they're hard to find now. There's one volume that seems to be, that you can find, and maybe the other one is the one that has the contested stories in. But anyway, yeah, and he goes on and he talks about, like there's, like his brother Mycroft, established buffoon rather than a superior intelligent. And it's like, he quotes in here, like, I love this. Oh, good God, ejaculates Mycroft, picking up a mistakenly thick copy of The Subjection of Women by John Stuart Mill. Feminism. And it's funny that throughout the Sherlock Holmes stories, Holmes, I think, ejaculates. Watson does. So there's lots of ejaculating in the works of Sherlock Holmes. The next little bit is sort of a little memorial of Derwent May, who died in September 26. I think he was 80-some years old. And he was a frequent writer of Times Literary Supplement, and he wrote, which I've wanted to get. It's he wanted to, I want to get, but he wrote a history sort of the Times Literary Supplement, and I've wanted to get that for a little while. But it says here that by the time of its common centenary, the TLS had printed more than 250 million words. May estimated, so he estimated this. And then the last little part is about sort of printing errors that can happen in books. And it starts out with lexicographer Susie Dent, who had a nasty experience in opening a copy of her new book, Word Perfect. She saw that it was not the obvious gag. Alas, here falls into place Word Perfect. An entomological entertainment for the everyday of the year, a book, but it's they printed the earlier version of the manuscript, and then MZ goes on and talks about they sometimes receive review copies of new books distinguished by such printing errors. There was a book about George Eliot that spelt her name wrong on the spine. There was a book stuck into its hardcovers upside down. They were the hardcovers that promised they were wrapped around a study of the Brontes, only for their contents to turn out to be a study of accessible digital practicals in higher education. And it just says these examples all date from the past year or so. So there's quite a few errors. And going into the story are the few articles here. I'll just highlight a few that I found interesting. The Derwent May, they reprint one of his reviews of a book from 1960. Let me see, when was this done? Sorry, it's a little unwieldy here for space-wise. It was published March 23rd, 1962. And it's Torchbearer, the historical novel, what Balzac, Goethe, and Tolstoy owe to Walter Scott. And it's a review of the historical novel by George Lukács, translated by Hannah and Stanley Mitchell. And it's quite interesting. And he goes through sort of brief things regarding it's from a Marxist. The writer Lukács is sort of done this historical perspective from a Marxist point of view. So there's a bit of contention there in the article, but he talks Derwent is sort of pleased that he doesn't confine the everything of the historical novel to reference to Arnold, Henry James, or Coleridge, but instead uses from perspectives of Balzac, Schiller, Goethe, and Hegel. And then he goes on and talks like how the author goes through historical novels and saying that sort of Scott was a precursor of all this, and he did it really well, and then sort of saying that it matches, the historical form matches exactly Hegel's more abstract account of the way the historical process takes place. I'll take his word for that because I'm not that familiar with Hegel's process of historical process. So, and then how Goethe and Balzac both seized on precisely this aspect of Scott's genius. And then he also talks about how Balzac sort of was great because he used that same process, but for contemporary times, and it works well. And then he goes after 1848, things change, and they use sort of historical events, and they make him sort of parallel the contemporary times that it's writing, and not really writing historical. And he's saying that they're still good, but it changes. There's an interesting paragraph at the end here. It says, he talks about that, even though he uses a Marxist view some of the things, but a lot of the information and the conclusions most people won't disagree with. But then he says, what is uncompromisingly Marxist is the basis of Professor Lukács's literary evaluation. And it is here that the great majority of readers in the post-war world will shear away from its arguments without any hesitation. Whether in the West, in the more or less stable communist empire, or in the now shining new countries of the third world, there cannot be many people fresh to the problem who think that the development of the awareness of the nature of the historical struggle for progress is the supreme aim of literature. I'm not so sure if that's solely Marxist. I might be wrong, but I don't know if that's, that is solely Marxist view, that the aim of literature is for the progress and supreme, it's his historical struggle. The nature of an awareness of the nature of the historical struggle for progress is the supreme aim of literature. I'm not too sure about that. But it's interesting, and it looks like, and the book actually was written, it looks like, in Munich before the war, and then translated. It's hard. It doesn't actually say, but I think it was translated at the time that he did this. So that was interesting. Yeah. There's other ones here. There's a interesting little in brief regarding a collection of Ray Bradbury's crime. It's called Killer Come Back to Me, The Crime Stories of Ray Bradbury. And that sounds very, very interesting. I wasn't aware of that. I also became aware of, about a month ago, there's a 3-volume biography of Ray Bradbury that looks very interesting. And let's see, I think there's one other thing I wanted to mention out of here. There's quite a few other things that are interesting. Like there's books here. It says Not Keeping Calm, British Morale and Other Myths, Britain at Bay, The Epic Story of the Second World War, 1938 to 1941, Alan Allport, 608 pages, profile. Publishers, The Spirit of the Blitz, Home Intelligence and British Morale, September 1940 to June 1941, Paul Addison and Jeremy A. Krang, editors, Oxford University Press, 489 pages. Those look kind of interesting as books. I don't know if I'm going to rush out and buy them. I'd be interested in buying that historical fiction though one. That I'd be interested to see what the full argument is in that. I have difficulty turning pages. Oh, there's one here of Tom Stoppard, a biography of Tom Stoppard, Hermione Lee. It's almost 1,000 pages. Looks interesting. And then there's Kleist, 2 books on Kleist the artist, Heinrich von Kleist, Michael Colhannes, translated by Michael Hoffman. It's very short, New Directions, paperback, 141 pages. Another one, The Marquis of O by Heinrich von Kleist, translated by Nicholas Jacobs. Here's another one. That's The Train Was on Time, Heinrich Boll, translated by Leah. It's a Penguin paperback, 107 pages. Death is My Destination. Boll's debut looks for beauty amid the depravity of war. The other one that I'm trying to find it here. No, I think that probably was it actually. So, oh yes, no, I know the other thing that I was going to say because, the issue that I haven't got today is they show this is in the next week's, which would have been yesterday's, the 15th, is an essay and looks like a utterly modern author, Arthur Hugh Clough, which I found very interesting and sort of like I say, this is where connections go, because he had a poem which I like. It's called Through a Glass Darkly, which I am sure, I've never looked it up, but I am sure that there is the connection here to Sheridan Le Fanu's In a Glass Darkly. Not 100% sure of that, but it's too close of a resemblance, coincidence, to not have some connection. And I haven't read that in probably 30 some years. So I don't know if there is anything in here that's yeah, I haven't read it in so long, so but yeah, and also too, which is interesting, that Isaac Asimov used from his poems like three lines for the 3 laws of robotics that were sort of, he used similar wording as Clough's poem. I can't remember what poem that is, but anyway, let's get on to the other things. As I said, I've been getting the New Statesman, and there's a number of interesting articles in here. I haven't read it all. Obviously, I flipped through and read ones that I found of peak interest for the moment, and then see how it goes for the rest of the week to read. Here's one. Yeah, it's just removing statues. They're nothing more than a stone supplement to the preposterous honor system, and he's saying like it doesn't really matter if the statues are removed. There's better ways of sort of keeping history alive and put them in a sort of a park or something like that, or a museum. Yeah, he presents an interesting argument in a way. This one I'll probably wind up reading. The Many Faces of Joe Biden. Can the veteran insider defeat Donald Trump and set the U.S. on a path of renewal? It's a little longer. Most of them are just about a page long, which is kind of nice. Yeah, here it is. There's another page, is Eaton and the Need to Win. And the guy was sort of saying that the author, Harry Ayers, has a few things in common with Boris Johnson, that they both sort of won a prize or two. The Newcastle, won the old-style Newcastle Scholarship covering both classics and divinity in 1975, and Johnson won the Newcastle Classical Scholarship in 1981, after the classics and divinity elements had been separated. Now, he goes on, he doesn't paint a great picture. He talks about, people to win this prize, they got ill and probably, early death to some of them in order to try to get it, because of trying to either worry or just, study and everything. But he paints a picture too that the whole idea is to win, and the whole purpose of it is to, through Eton, is to win. And it doesn't matter by foul or fair means. And it sort of fits. And he says, that he sort of realized in his life that, he became addicted to winning, just winning, but he didn't know why. And what do you do once you won? And he says that Boris Johnson is that way. He's just addicted to winning. He'll win regardless of however means he will do it. He will win, but he just doesn't then know what to do with it. So I found that kind of interesting. Another one that was in here that was very good. Oh, well, I haven't read this one yet. Portrait of a Poet on Fire. How do we tell the story of Sylvia Plath? That one it's 4 pages long. One that was 2 pages here is Down and Out in England. How Robert Tressel's novel The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist became a sacred text for aspiring socialists, and it's written by Alan Taylor. And It's kind of interesting because I first learned of this book through Orwell, because there was Orwell, I think he did a review of it. I can't remember exactly, but I thought it sounded interesting. He was a bit disparaging of it, but then when I read it, I really loved it. And I couldn't see the faults that Orwell said, and it explains in here what. Because the faults that Orwell said was that it's a bit disjointed and wasn't, that great. But it was because it was like the version that he would have read was an edited version, like hacked up version, basically. So it wasn't until 1954 that the original text came out. The one I read was a Penguin Silver Classic, Modern Classics. I now have, I was given the Oxford one because I'd given that one away as well. This one said, I've got some books that are, I guess, getting sunned, so the spine is getting sunned. But last year I picked up a hardcover of this. And this is the one he's talking about there, that in 1955 it came out as this is the full story. This is the full book as written by Robert Noonan, his real name. Trestle was it's Trestle for painting, and he was a painter. And the other thing that I found that was sort of interesting was, and I didn't know this, while there seems to be a biography written about him by F.C. Ball, he says his biographer revealed he was born in, he wasn't so much sort of working class so much. His father was a policeman, a constabulary, but it was sort of, I think he was illegitimately born, and then his mother married his stepfather, and they didn't get along. He buggered off to South Africa, which I found interesting, because that's been a long interest in me. And then he married in 1891, had a daughter, but then he came back to England. But he emigrated to Canada, he was going to emigrate to Canada in 1911, and he was heading to Liverpool, and he died on the way of tuberculosis, I think it was. So a few things. I just like how some things dovetail of things that I like, and it's interesting how the serendipity, I guess it is. It's not, I don't account it to anything, supernatural in any way, but it's just interesting that things that I really like, and then I find out later there's connections to other things. The Spectator, I haven't dug into this as heavily, but there's a few articles that were interesting. This was kind of interesting, what he got wrong about lockdown by Rod Little. He talks about that, and I'm not so sure of his percentages. He says when they first thought it was 2 and 3% death rate, but now it's 0.4%, which is probably similar to normal flu. But at least flu, you do have a vaccine for it. And then, he doesn't quite think that the lockdowns now he presents an okay argument, for that. There's, I think it was in the, New Statesman, there was one regarding that. The guy was saying, it's a taking away our, it is in here. COVID has killed off our civil liberties. And by Lionel Shriver, and he does an argument that just exasperates me at times. Like he starts out the whole thing is the language used. It started out with smoking. The 1960s and 1970s saw little popular objection to legislation restricting advertisements by private companies purveying a legal product. Little objection was raised thereafter when these same companies were banned from promoting their wares at all. Broadly shamed, even smokers have mutely accepted confiscatory taxes on cigarettes as laws to protect the public from passive smoking have extended parts of the U.S. to beaches, parks, and even one's own apartment balcony, locations where the danger to others is virtually non-existent. Like, he's making it sound like, but it's not virtually non-existent. Somebody who's standing outside, like my door here in the front, and smoking, smoke comes up and it comes right in, and that's where my bed is. So I'm breathing this, and it sets off my asthma. What's worse is those e-cigarettes. It's not virtually, it's like, what about my civil liberties of not having to breathe in this? So he doesn't talk about that. But he goes on, he talks about other things, the sugar tax is on here. And then he says the mother of all of incursions on civil liberties is the package of restrictions to suppress COVID-19, making more expensive soft drinks a mere bagatelle. We're containing or failing to contain a virus whose lethality is now estimated to be close to flus. But he goes on, like he's going on and saying they're taking away the civil liberties for this, so don't do it. And it's like that. I always have a problem with this argument. It's like saying, okay, somebody creates the nuclear, a nuclear fission. Well, yeah, you can make a bomb from it. So therefore, that shouldn't have been done. They shouldn't have had the scientific breakthrough for that. You shouldn't have done that. But there's a lot of good to be done with these things. Science itself is not bad. It's what people can do with it that are bad. And when you put restrictions like for COVID-19, the lockdown, I think they are useful because it's probably a little more lethal to someone who has health conditions, and there is no vaccine. Those people who have against the flu can get vaccinated, and most of the time it's for the correct flu, so they're okay. But to say that don't do that because they're taking away liberties, no. What we should do is don't vote in a government that destroys those liberties, that uses that, piggybacks on that, and uses it for bad things. The thing in itself is not bad. It's what that is done with it, and the people that do those things to it are bad. But that distinction is rarely seen in these arguments. It's like, oh, this is being done, so let's stop this. Well, no, let's look at this. But anyway, it just really it does get to me, that kind of thing, because it's just really short-sightedness, and his language there too is just ready to make people go, oh yeah, that's right, but without thinking, and that's the problem. It's thought without thinking. The other thing I haven't read yet in here is this looks very interesting. It's a book review of Conquistadors: A New History by Ferdinand Cervantes. Alan Lane, 30 pounds, 608 pages, A Fatal Clash of Civilizations. And there's a map there. It's not a long review, so I'll get to that later, but that looks very, very good. And there's a few other ones in here that I still yet to read. And then I've been perusing the oldie, and there's some crackers in here I thought was good. I liked Giles Brandrith, and he's got a little editorial, and it's again for someone who died. Sir Ronnie Harwood died in September, and he went to the funeral. He was a playwright, writer, did a lot of stuff for theater, and he had a lot of he had a lot of anecdotes for the theater, and he goes through. He talks about and there's one that's pretty good. He's talking about Tom Courtenay, played the title role in The Dresser on stage and screen, was among the mourners at the funeral. And so was historian Lady Antonia Fraser, the widow of Ronnie's fellow playwright and friend Harold Pinter. But then there's and then he brings in, that's a segue to Harold Pinter, that Tom Courtenay and Sheila Hancock, who was the widow of John Thaw, Inspector Morse, say that they were doing a play. Peter Bull appeared in a Pinter play on. Doesn't say what title it is, but anyway, Peter Bull was frantic because it was on Saturday and he needed to catch his train, which left at 9:50 p.m. But the play ends at 10. So she says, "It can't be done," said Sheila. "Oh yes, it can," said Peter. "This is Pinter. We'll just cut the pauses." They did, and caught the train with ease. I thought that was really good. The other one that's really good is just a little reminiscence here of Diana Rigg. That's Emma Peel in her leather from the Avengers. That's probably the best way to say it. But it's talking about, as well, it's called The Gospel According to Diana Rigg. And the little author is just a little thing as Reverend Peter Mullen. He's rector of St. Michael's, Cornhill. And in every Lent, he says he gets someone to read a little bit of T.S. Eliot. So in 2009, he thought they'd get The Wasteland, so he asked Diana Rigg to do it. And she said, yeah, and it just goes on how she learned 434 lines by heart and read it out and did other inflections on it that are not normally done. But he goes on to say that, which I love this little part, because it ended quite late, the sermon thing or in the church, and she wanted to go to see her daughter was in a play, debuting in a play across town. I'm assuming that's Rachel Sterling. It doesn't say, but I don't think she has any other daughters that are actresses, so it must have been Rachel Sterling. But anyway, and it talks about that there's at that time of the night, 7 p.m. in the West End. She needed to go to the West End, and there was no taxis to be had. So this Reverend Peter Mullen flagged down a taxi, stopped a taxi that had passengers in. It's hilarious because he opens the door and says, "Oh, do you mind sharing your taxi with Diana Rigg?" And they sort of, I guess, looked at each other and said, "No." So I thought that was really good. There's quite a few other things of interest here. I do like this because most of them are really short, so it takes you 10 to 15 minutes. It's a bit of fluff. And there's another good one. Good English Isn't Rocket Science, and it mentions C.P. Snow's Two Cultures and how that science now, like science terms, are bandied about to make people sound, or the media does, but they're not using them correctly. So it's talking about that. So that was interesting. But anyway, I've waffled on here for almost 40 minutes. So anyway, I better get back to some reading. But that's what I've done today, is just read a lot of this. And I've got the archaeology magazines that are piling up that I bought, individual ones as well. But anyway, if you find this interesting, this kind of thing, and I might do this, it might be sort of I'll do Friday reads, but then I'll do a wrap up of on Saturday, the type of the periodicals, meander through magazines, and meander through magazines and periodicals. If you find that of interest, do let me know. Shout out in the comments, and I'll try to do it. It'll be something that I'll try to do as a regular feature. Because I find it interesting too, because it'll be basically what I find interesting, I guess, unless I know other people have pointed out interests to me, then I can point those out as well. But for the most part, it will be. And I'm getting very, very close to 500, so can we do that before the weekend is out? We'll see. Take care, BookTube. Have a good weekend and good reading.